All right. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully that cup of coffee you've had this morning or 2 cups is going to last you through my presentation. So I'll try to be as interesting as possible. So as mentioned, my name is Clint Sprov. As you can tell by my accent, I'm from the U.S., based in Texas. So I work for a very hot startup, which some people call them unicorns. And so I focus on competitive intelligence. And this can be kind of a challenge. Doing product marketing at a startup can be very challenging anyway. But when your role is competitive intelligence, it's even added to that. So what I want to talk to you about is competitive intelligence at a startup and how it affects marketing overall. So what specifically is competitive intelligence? But before we do that, how many of you have competitive intelligence as a specific role within your organization where that's all you do? Okay, great. Now, as you know, as a product marketer, we all are involved in competitive intelligence. We have to do it in some form or fashion. It's just part of the description. As you saw in the previous presentation, a list of all the different things that product marketers do, and competitive intelligence is one of those. So when we look at this, there we go. So what is competitive intelligence? You guys can read what's on the slide, but from my perspective, it's really much broader. It's really understanding what are the things necessary to drive product strategy. So typically, depending on the organization that you're in, a lot of times that competitive intelligence task or role really gets pushed into what can you do for sales, right? Can I give sales battle cards? They're in this hot deal. You get that Slack message or you get that email saying, hey, I'm going up against competitor X. What do you got? Help me. They just mentioned my competitor. They talked about how much they love them. Now, it could have been just something in passing, but all of a sudden now, it's a fire drill. So you really have to take a step back and look at competitive intelligence just beyond simple battle cards and really expand that into not only sales plays, but how does this affect the go-to-market strategy? How does this happen when there is a dynamic change within the competitive landscape? So again, CI is leveraging the information from a business, market, and competitors to help businesses gain a competitive advantage. Because that's really what your organization wants, is that competitive advantage. Now, if any of you how many of you work for a tech company, a software company, SaaS? Excellent. This is great. When I go to traditional competitive intelligence conferences, it's the complete opposite, right? So I feel like I'm with family today. So this is great. So really understanding, as you know, the landscape in tech changes on a daily basis. One minute you have your main competitor, then they're swallowed up by one of the giant companies, or they merge with another startup. So you're constantly reevaluating what does that competitive landscape look like and how you're working with understanding what your competitors are doing. And when that happens, you end up having to reevaluate and retool your competitive messaging for sales and also that product direction. So that makes a huge difference. There we go. So there's been a rise in competitive intelligence as a role. So I found this particular slide interesting, that organizations are really increasing the dedication in terms of the number of employees they have dedicated to competitive intelligence. I kind of fell into the role initially because, I used to work prior to GitLab, I worked for another startup in the Bay Area where, again, it was a dynamic company where the competitive landscape was changing constantly. So even though my role was director of product marketing, it started to shift more. Most of my focus became on competitive intelligence because that landscape kept changing and changing. So I ended up focusing heavily on that. And that's how I ended up at GitLab, because I spent most of my time understanding who those competitors were, working on competitive sales enablement materials and kind of building that up. So what you're seeing here is, if you just look at the 2018 survey into 2019, that you're starting to see an increase of employees that are actually dedicated to competitive intelligence. And so you can see this, the number of employees dedicated to CI by size. So the landscape is really changing in terms of how competitive intelligence is done. And one of the reasons I'm really glad to be able to speak to you about today is just understanding, especially from a tech perspective, how do you manage competitive intelligence when you have one, 50 plus competitors, and two, when you manage more than one product, especially when you're at a startup. It's very difficult. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about GitLab. And I'm doing this not to really talk about how great GitLab is as a company, but I want to basically explain to you and actually get you to kind of share my pain, so to speak, but really kind of get an understanding of, especially if you've worked for a startup, how fast things change just internally, and then trying to work with that from a competitive perspective. So GitLab, again, was founded in 2014. In this slide, again, with things changing so rapidly, it says 900 plus employees across 56 countries. We have now reached over that 1,000 mark. I think we're at like 1,050 within the company. Broad adoption of the organization. We have millions of users, over 100,000 plus organizations using our product. So our product is based on an open source model, right? So, and basically it's what's called an open core model, meaning that we help maintain that open source version within the community. And then we add proprietary features on top of that for our paid tiers. So we have over 2,200 plus code contributors, as well as 10,000 total contributors. So just recently, in the past few months, we just received Series E funding of $268 million. So we are growing quite rapidly. Now, when I did a previous conference, I think we were probably at around maybe 700 employees. So we're growing at a very rapid pace. There we go. So to get a better understanding of how product marketing is done at GitLab and how we work at GitLab. Now, this is the thing that brings an interesting challenge, which is actually kind of fun as well. The GitLab company values, and this actually ties into how we do competitive intelligence and how we do marketing in general. So GitLab basically runs the company based upon these core values. And the first letter of each of these words actually comprise of the word credit, right? So we talk about collaboration. So first of all, GitLab is 100% remote workforce, meaning we do not have an office. We do not even have a headquarters office. The CEO works out of his home, everyone in the company. So we have 1,000 plus employees from the top down where everyone is remote. So we work asynchronously. So meaning that we have to use various tools to help us communicate effectively across the organization. We use GitLab to build GitLab. So we use it internally. Everyone from the executive assistant to the VPs, to everyone in the company. We all use GitLab to manage how we work. The entire product marketing team uses GitLab to be able to schedule marketing events when we get requests from sales. So we use that across the board. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with GitLab, think of using the issue tracker within Jira in your organization to do a request for anything that you need within the organization. Results, we track outcomes, not hours. Now, as a product marketer, I love this, right? Because that's what we're based upon, right? What are the results are we producing for the organization? So we track outcome, not hours. Efficiency, boring solutions win, complexity slows cycle time. So we're about making sure that we can get out that minimum set of features and getting it out to the customer and really getting them to tell us what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Can we pull it back? So we really live that agile lifestyle, especially when everyone hears that term, the buzzword of the decade, which is DevOps, right? Everyone's talking DevOps, DevSecOps, and things of that nature. But GitLab actually lives that within the organization. Diversity. So we're remote only, so we're able to hire across the globe, which makes things very easy for us because now we can grab the best talent and they can work from anywhere. You can work from home. If you need to get a temporary office space like WeWork, you can get that and expense that. And so you can work in that office environment or setting. Iteration. Now most of you probably are familiar with the term minimum viable product. So at GitLab, we do what's known as minimum viable change. So if the change is better than the existing solution, then ship it. Now, this doesn't necessarily just apply to our products. It applies to how we do product marketing. Now, if you're like me, as a product marketer, you're very sensitive about any information that you're going to put out there, especially something that you create that has your name on it, even if it's in the early stages. But at GitLab, it doesn't work that way. If we want to be able to push out a new message and push it out to the public as early as possible, we can do that. I can go to the website, make an update, make that change. Now, for a lot of us, that's very difficult because we want to make sure that we have our messaging and our positioning locked down and it's tight before we push it out there. Now, as a marketer coming into GitLab, that was very tough for me, right? Because you don't want to put your name behind something that's out there that you created that you feel that needs to be changed, but you're not 100% ready for it to go out. So at GitLab, we build on what's called the minimum viable change, meaning that we want to iterate on whatever we put out. So if I want to be able to change that messaging or update a document or put out a blog post, I can go ahead, create it, push it out there, let everyone see it, get that feedback from the community. We iterate, we make it better. So this applies across the entire company. Transparency. Everything at GitLab is public. If you go to about.gitlab.com, you'll see that we have over 3,000 plus page handbook that's out there that dictates everything that we do, how we run product marketing, how we run sales, our strategy, our roadmaps, our quarterly goals, and any issues that customers are having with the product. Everything is transparent. Now, as a marketer, again, this is something that can be very challenging because most organizations are very private, especially when it comes to the roadmap. And the larger the company is, I've been part of companies where when you push out that roadmap, it's going to say, H1, H2, and it's going to give you some high level, very vague, high level theme epic of what you're going to put out and what you might not put out. GitLab, it doesn't work that way. Everything that we do is out in the open and it's out there for everyone to see, and including the roadmap. So let me talk about some of the challenges that we have in the organization. So GitLab is basically not only the company, but the product. So what we do is our biggest challenge is a lot of organizations, and your organizations probably have this as well. If you notice that, especially when you start talking about DevOps or within tech, and I'm sure most of you own at least 2 or 3 of these products that you see up here in your dev organization. Someone has it, either from the management side or from the development side. So a lot of organizations are taking these various tools and kind of trying to put them together to develop their DevOps tool chain. How do we do agile project management? How do we plan it? How do we create this? How do we do security testing? How do we monitor that product? So there's a lot of tools out there that are very complex. So GitLab developed a solution for the entire DevOps lifecycle. So we have a single solution that basically addresses all the needs of each of these components within DevOps. So instead of you having Jira or some of these other tools and trying to integrate them and keeping up with the updates, we have a single solution across DevOps that addresses that. Now, again, what does this mean? He's talking a lot about GitLab. What does that mean? Hopefully I can advance to the next slide. There we go. So the challenge that we have internally is, again, GitLab is a single solution, a single application delivered as a single platform. So one solution versus 50 plus DevOps competitor. So now, again, here's where you can share in my pain, right? So imagine having one solution that's more broad than it is deep, competing in all of these categories of solutions that have a ton of functionality, from the manage phase, from plan to create. So our challenge is we compete against all of these solutions in some form or fashion across the DevOps lifecycle. And So the competitive intelligence challenge is, how do you manage being able to get as much competitive information or relevant information across the DevOps lifecycle for all of these different solutions? So let me tell you about how we do it, our tools and our techniques, and hopefully you'll be able to take this back to your organization and apply some of this. So even though we are a tech startup, many of the things that we do will apply just across the board in general, especially if you're a tech company. So let me talk about how our organization is actually structured. So initially, we're structured differently. So we're called strategic marketing, but it's really it's the new name for our PMM organization. And the reason it was changed to strategic marketing is because what we do is very different than we do more than just PMM. Right. So the way it's organized, and I thought this was genius in terms of the director to actually put this together, because it made a lot of sense for the organization and how we operate. So we're actually divided. We have a market research and customer insight team, which consists of analyst relations, buyer research, and customer references. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Then, of course, you have competitive intelligence, and then product marketing with that traditional role. And we also have technical marketing. And technical marketing at GitLab is very technical, meaning that they not only create the technical demos, they know the product inside and out. So they work hand in hand with product marketing. So they're a very good blend of having that very deep technical skills, but also very sharp product marketing skills. Then we also have technology partnerships and channel marketing. And then all of us manage the enablement for sales partners and resellers. Now, the reason this setup is, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's different in the way it works for us and how it works for us, is the fact that we have this analyst relations under product marketing. Now, typically in some organizations, especially the larger organizations, AR is typically under the corporate marketing banner. So as a PMM, you typically interface with that analyst relations person. What I love about having them within the PMM team is, and maybe you've run into this before, where you know that eventually you're going to get an email that says, hey, the next Magic Quadrant or wave or the next critical capabilities is coming out. Now, when AR is not within product marketing, a lot of times that AR person may leave, there's changes in that AR organization, and you get that last minute notification of, hey, there's a new Magic Quadrant and we have to fill this spreadsheet out within the next couple of days. And then there's this big scramble for everyone to work and gather all the information and provide it back to the analysts. By having them on our team, and we actually have a former Gartner analyst who actually manages that within the PMM team, we're always up to date. We know every thing that's going on within the analyst community, and we can set up those competitive inquiries as well. So we can work with Gartner, IDC, 451, and we can set up those competitive inquiries. We can say, hey, we need to understand what competitor XYZ is doing. How do you think they're doing? So from a competitive intelligence standpoint in product marketing, it helps us deliver better sales enablement for our sales organization. We also manage the customer advisory board and the participation in that. This is a thing that product marketing owns. So we're always involved in the customer advisory board. So we work with those customers so that we understand specifically what do they not only like about us, but what are the things where we can improve in these different areas. And we can take that information and we can feed that back in to how we run our marketing organization. So we also subscribe, and this is another reason of having that AR team within product marketing very special, because we basically subscribe to a lot of different types of research in the organization. Now, as you know, working with the analysts, it can be very, very expensive. You know, not only just trying to participate, but trying to do these analyst inquiries and being able to pull in all that research. So by having them under the product marketing team, we're able to gather and get all that information from Gartner, from 451. I can get information in terms of mergers and acquisitions. What are their takes? What are their SWOT analysis? And be able to use that information and be able to dissect it and be able to push it out to our sales team, as well as our senior management team. We also look at peer review sites, and this information, again, we shared across all of PMM. So this is how we're structured within the organization to be able to take this information and be able to push it out. There we go. So what else do we do? So we also create battle cards. Again, I talked about this not necessarily being the main focus of PMM, but we basically use a battle card platform. And with the number of competitors that we have to track, we need to make sure we have a very unified and formal way of pushing this information out to sales. So there are several, and of course you'll see Clue out in the vendor area, but these are some of the tools that we evaluated: Crayon, Clue, and Compipe. And so the way that we've been able to break it down is we only track our top 15 competitors. Now, the reason we track the top 15, but in reality, our main focus, especially from a GitLab perspective, are really two competitors. One, of course, is Microsoft, and the other is GitHub, which was acquired by Microsoft, which was our direct competitor. There are other competitors out there that we definitely look at, but those are the ones that those are the two that we typically see across the board with us. So when we look at our top 15 competitors and our sales team, they're always going to experience, some, niche startups, some open source solutions, but we want to make sure we're tracking the top 15. And the reason we do this is because we want to make sure that we are not as US centric as most PMM teams tend to be. We want to make sure that we're looking at it, holistically across the board and getting a better understanding of what our competitors are. Okay, great. So how do we do this? How do we manage this, especially being an all remote company? So we use basically all the normal tools that you can think of. So we use Slack, of course. We also use Chorus to capture some of those customer conversations. And of course, we use Zoom. And then we also have linked our product marketing with I wouldn't call it a sales methodology, but something called force management. How many of you are familiar or heard of force management before? Okay, a couple of you. So just to give you just a brief overview, what force management allows you to have what's known as command of the message, so that your entire organization is speaking with that same voice. So that you don't have product marketing saying one thing, your PM saying something else, and your sales force saying something different. Everyone's on the same page saying the exact same thing across the board. And we use that so that we can focus on what we call defensible differentiators. And this really helps with competitive intelligence. When we talk about differentiators, a lot of times in organizations, we always focus on that one thing, unique differentiators. And it's really a lot more. Okay, so you have that unique differentiator. Now, uniqueness is fleeting in a lot of organizations, especially when it comes to product, right? So you have to look at two other categories. One is comparative differentiators. How do we do it differently? Or how do we compare to how they do it? And then the next one is holistically. What does the prospect like about our company? Do they like our work culture? Do they like about our customer success, how we work with them? So being able to take this will help reduce the amount of time that you're spending on competitive intelligence, because now you can focus and really concentrate on those three areas of uniqueness, comparative, as well as the holistic differentiators. So, and I know I'm running out of time, but let me go ahead and get through this. So, full transparency. So when we talk about competitive intelligence, here's what we do that's different. So GitLab, we actually put our roadmap out there, and we talk about how mature we are with our product. So we actually push the information out there. Now, if you think about it, most organizations would not talk about their weak points. They only will talk about where you're strong, where you're super competitive. Now, imagine being a PM looking at this. Most of them would have a heart attack just showing that they only have either zero or half the functionality. We push this out. This is on our website today, and you can go and see the latest and greatest version that's out there. Our PMs are required to talk about where we're strong and where we're weak. This is great for your sales team. Now, think about this from a competitive analysis standpoint. Your sales reps and that sales engineer, they go to a customer, they're out there talking. Competitor says, well, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's like, you're right, we can't right now, but we talk about minimum viable change. We're pushing out these features, and you'll be able to see we're going to iterate, we're going to get better, we're going to improve, and they can see that improvement and be able to check out the roadmap and when we're going to release those features. Again, we also use our competitors to give us competitive information on themselves. So you kind of use this Jedi mind trick, so to speak, where, and I love this slide because the guy that's up here, his little avatar, he's one of those real technical guys that hates to be wrong. So we put up a feature comparison, what we do, what they do. And he saw it and he just lost it. It's like, well, we do this better. We do this. We do this. It's like, oh, really? Can you tell me more? Sure. We do this. You guys can't compete with us. I was like, you know what? Great. So we have our competitors really doing our jobs for us. Now, we didn't go out there and just put out, incomplete information. We put out what we had based upon what's readily available. And as you know, in the tech community, things change rapidly. So allowing them to create an issue within GitLab, submit that, or even go onto Discus and put in a comment, we can now take that information and push it out there. Now, this is where transparency plays a big role in the organization, being able to take that information and bring it in. So real quick, lessons learned. So again, we don't have it all figured out as well. I don't think any organization does, but we create an environment where everyone can contribute. And that makes it, it makes it a lot easier for us. So not only can we get information internally, but we get it externally from our competitors, our customers, and anyone that has information on these products can give it to us. So that really helps. And we don't try to boil the ocean for every competitor. When I first joined, I was like, what in the world did I sign up for? There is no way, especially with a team of me, myself, and I, there's no way you can do competitive intelligence. So you have to be more strategic about it. You have to understand how you're going to be able to tackle this. Focus on your top 3, but continuously monitor the other competitors. Collect and curate different points of view for competitive intelligence across your organization, right? Sales, SDRs, BDRs, and iterate. Gather what you can. Don't wait to perfection. And this is something that we all talk about, agile, and being agile product marketing. This is what's really going to help. Iterate. Get what you can, iterate, and then make it better. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Clinton. Thank you. So we do not